Well, the power of social media's influence took a dangerous turn last week. Influencer Kai Cenat is charged with inciting a riot after authorities say he caused chaos on the streets of New York City Friday. A massive crowd showed up after Cenat promised an electronics giveaway in Union Square. Some people, including police, were injured. Well, the PR company that represents the influencer responded saying that they are deeply disheartened and do not condone that behavior. I want to bring in Dr. Pamela Rutledge. She is the director of Media Psychology Research Center and specializes in understanding the way people use and are impacted by social media. Thanks for joining us. So listen,
happy to be here.
It's clear that influencers do in fact have some influence, particularly when it comes to maybe buying products. But this incident in New York, I had never seen before. So this is another level of influence. When you watched it, what were you thinking?
Well, I was thinking that for the first time, these things are really moving offline. You know, these influencers are very young. They don't have experience with the physical nature of their fame and celebrity. So they're really looking for that kind of feedback. And I was thinking, you know, this isn't a cottage industry. We've had influencers for about 20 years now, and they really started with mommy blogs. But now we have these big influencers, big audiences, and we should be thinking ahead of what's going to happen if they all show up.
So talk to us about the psychology behind the influencer crave, if you will. What is it about the ability to stream right into their phone from their bedroom that triggers things in certain people's heads that make them just an instant fan and drive them to go into Union Square and jump on statues and throw barricades at cop cars?
Yes, and in the hopes of getting a PlayStation.
Right.
You know, one of the things that we see with social media is that it's very raw and very authentic, so it feels very real. And unlike most traditional celebrities who are playing a role, these influencers are being themselves. They're speaking right to the camera. And the human brain responds to that as if it were real. So these young people who are at a stage developmentally where social connection is super important really do feel emotionally connected to these influencers. They relate to them, they emulate them because they feel like it's just another cool friend. When someone is seen as a friend, they are much more influential than if they're just a spokesperson.
Yeah, you know, Doctor, I was reading about a Twitch influencer who had gained a significant following just playing video games and talking about the games, reviewing them. And once he pivoted to talking about his personal life while he was playing the game, his following exploded. The personal connection is the currency when it comes to these platforms, whether they're authentic or not. If people believe it's an authentic connection, then they're going to follow you, which brings me to my question about negative psychological impacts that an influencer can create. Because we know, even though we know, you know, there's real life and there's Instagram, but this is a brand, we still somehow, you know, if you're doing it well, then we believe it's authentic.
Well, and this personal connection makes the behavior of these influencers very impactful. And influencers can have positive impact. They can encourage pro-social behavior. They can demonstrate, you know, skills like, you know, a lot of kids really care about gameplay and the strategies, but they can also emphasize materialism because they're being sponsored to sell products. And because getting eyeballs on your stream makes revenue for the influencers, they tend to be extreme. So sometimes they're even promoting misbehavior as a way of getting attention that normalizes some of those antisocial or unhealthy behaviors.
Pam, you have said, and I found it interesting, you know, if you're streaming on social media and you do something that the audience doesn't like, they leave a negative comment or they just click out. But when the live stream becomes a live event in Union Square, there is a penalty that some influencers have never experienced before.
And they haven't realized that they don't have distance anymore. I mean, it's one thing to get negative comments. And frankly, that really bothers influencers to see negative comments. It bothers all of us. But to be in person, my guess is that Kai didn't have any sense of the danger he might be in that kind of crowd, or the danger to other people. These are all very young people. We have to remember that the human brain doesn't reach maturity till your mid-20s, which means they are not as skilled as they will be in terms of assessing risk, long-range planning, and certainly in self-control.
That's such a good reminder, because when I saw that crowd, I remember thinking, well, what do you think was going to happen? Yeah. You know what I mean? You're giving away a really expensive gaming system. It's New York City. You didn't do it in the middle of nowhere. But I was also kind of surprised, because I thought, this guy has a PR firm. What about sort of the business supports around him? Why didn't they think about it too? Or are they also really young?
I know. I think that's a really good point, because it is true that, most of us would say, well, what did they think was going to happen? But I don't think that Kasin Sinet in particular had any idea what would happen. All of the influencer meetups that happened to date, some of them have gotten a crowd. Most of them have been contained, like at VidCon. But these agencies, these PR agencies, really need to step up and train these kids and impose some sort of ethical and values here about what could happen, and be aware of the danger to the rest of the public if things go wrong.
Look, he walked away with a criminal charge, but I think he also walked away with a sense of social responsibility that had never been imposed on him before.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah. So what you hope it doesn't turn into a no publicity's, bad publicity kind of thing, and some other influencer doesn't decide this is a way to elevate their own visibility. So I would hope that the lessons that are coming out are not about parenting. This is not about parenting. That was about the stupidest thing I've heard. It's really about understanding influence and crowds and young people.
Pam Rutledge, we listened and we learned. So thank you.
My pleasure.